Hey there and welcome back to another She-Hulk video. And today we'll be talking through the latest episode to drop, the finale, Whose Show Is This? Which, well, it certainly wraps up the series, that's for sure. And it does so in perhaps the most unique way in MCU history. I honestly think one of the big problems I had in the past with this series was the lack of Jen development and her feeling like a bit of a bystander and side character in her own show. And on top of that, there was the lack of central narrative. And in this episode, those issues were well and truly put to rest forever, because honestly, the past couple of episodes, starting with her going to Emil's mental health retreat, really kickstarted her character development big time and pushed her forward as an awesome, engaging character. And then they followed that up with her episode with Daredevil, which was also awesome and fleshed her out even more, and then they finished with this episode, where she no longer feels like a side character whatsoever, but the main protagonist. She feels like she actually matters in the context of the story, which was great to see. But I do think it would have been better to have this vibe, I don't know, the entire way through, instead of it having been there at the start, and then again at the end. But during the midpoint of the season, it very much felt like they dropped the ball in terms of her personal arc. And they really went way too hard on the side characters. And then we come to the central narrative, and this episode makes it clear that the story doesn't need some big grand villain, because ultimately, the story is Jen's life falling apart because she got superpowers and how she has to put it back together. And yeah, actually, that's not really too bad. A bit of a commentary on their own superhero formula, so to speak. And I did enjoy that, but still, because Jen's personal arc really wasn't that compelling for much of the season, I do feel like the story arc did fall a bit flat, at least for me. But yeah, with all that being said, let's jump right into this absolute acid trip of an episode. Anyway, they start off the episode with a completely unexpected old school monster movie style recap of the series so far. And yeah, it's safe to say I didn't see that coming, and it doesn't really make sense in the context of the show, but who cares, it was awesome. Because goddamn if it wasn't one of the funniest things this show's done so far. And honestly, this episode took fourth wall breaks that they've done so far in the show, and then laughed at them and called them weak. And then they went all in, and I gotta say, once again, could they not have had more of this shit the whole way through? The more meta shit they do, the more ridiculous things they do, the more Jen's personality has been able to shine through. And ultimately, this episode is the culmination of that. I just feel like now, it's a massive missed opportunity in hindsight. I would have liked them to make this series as weird as possible, but like in a good way. Like how WandaVision went all in with the different eras of sitcoms. I was just left wanting more and more of this stuff. Stuff that really makes Jen shine. But anyway, love the whole vibe, and then she wakes up, and she's locked in that secure containment facility where her friends and co-workers kind of blame her for smashing up the projector screen when she was being very publicly doxxed and nobody was doing anything about it, not even turning off the screen. Victim blaming much? Also, come on, all of them backing up like she's going to lose control and smash them all? Come on guys, let's be fair about this. She smashed up a parking lot and the lily pad in a battle with Daredevil and Leapfrog's goons respectively, and that was apparently all fine, because she was performing vigilante justice against lawbreakers. But why is it so illegal to smash up property that is actively being used to break the law by publishing stolen documents and revenge porn? How does that apparently get her to a maximum security prison? That's whack. Because ultimately, it feels like it's the same thing. She was preventing a crime. Standard superhero shit. But now she's in maximum security prison. It just feels so ridiculously harsh and over the top. And then she has to take a plea deal to wear a Hulk inhibitor so she can't transform. And her life just goes down the shitter. She gets fired from her job because, you know, the whole point was that they wanted She-Hulk. Without the transformation, there really isn't much of a point. She gets ragged on by the press, being called unstable, and she's stalked by journalists hoping for a comment or an interview. She isn't able to find a new job and loses her apartment and then has to move back in with her parents, sharing her old bedroom with her mum who uses it as a home gym. Yeah, truly rock bottom. So, if we're looking at the story of She-Hulk as being the destruction of her life, this is the moment in the story where the villain looks like they're about to win, only for them to have their comeback moment. And she's doing her best to make that happen, going full on Sherlock Holmes on intelligentsia, realizing that their leader is a guy called Hulk King, and that the company itself is run by other shell companies that operate outside US jurisdiction. And so there's no real legal avenue that she can pursue. And it's not like at the moment that she can go Hulk smash on anyone anymore. So it's really become a dead end, at least until Nikki proves herself the MVP yet again. I mean, seriously, she just carries this squad relentlessly and takes a video that Elaine, Jen's mum, sent her of Jen dancing in college with her friends and posts it on the Intelligentsia forum to attract trolls. Pretty much achieving the exact effect that the She-Hulk twerking clip from a couple of episodes did in real life. And I gotta hand it to the writers. They really have been able to predict, over the course of the show's entire run, how the trolls are going to react to every single twist, as they then manage to spoof the reactions literally the very next week. These trolls got to lift their game, I tell ya. They've been exposed. Also, we had the brief return of Dennis from the DA's office, telling the world that he dated her for a significant amount of time, and that she'd always been a psycho. So yeah, she really is at rock bottom when Dennis Bukowski can dunk on her on live TV and she can do nothing. The darkest timeline of all. But anyway, back to Nikki's post. This immediately gets her invited to an incel meetup. But since they're all misogynists, she has to figure out a way for her to listen in, but not actually attend. But before we get back to that, we have a fun little moment where Jen talks to the audience again about how this isn't a reluctant superhero story, but simply an exercise in angst. She's confused because she's just relentlessly getting screwed over with no chance of redemption. Is this what you want? She asks the misogynistic members of the audience. And yes, this is indeed what they probably want. If it was up to them, they'd end the show right here, roll the credits, her life's over. But of course, keep dreaming, because we have more to watch. Also, I love the part where the narrator from the prologue section tried to make his return and got slapped down by Jen, who says the show isn't that off the rails. Although, I kind of wish he could have finished that narration. Sounded pretty funny. But yeah, not that off the rails, she says, as we rapidly approach the most off the rails scene in MCU history. So Jen tries to contact Bruce, who is obviously still AWOL, and so she then messages Emil, asking if she can stay at his mental health retreat for a few days. But anyway, it's then back to Nikki, and it turns out she's going to rope poor Pug into this storyline, as she needs a man to enter the building to interact with the weirdos. And honestly, this has got to be his worst nightmare. Remember how sad he was when the shapeshifter told his co-workers, as him, that he loves to harass his female colleagues? This is a worst case scenario for sure. And so, Jen arrives at the mental health retreat and gets a room, as the misogynists make their way there as well. And man, this had me feeling betrayed. It's clever writing. It makes you feel so angry and lied to. Makes you feel like Emil's one of these people. And hell, at first it sort of implies he might even be Hulk King. I got so heated. And I actually was complaining that this was lazy writing to walk back on his character development. But in the end, it was once again me who was bamboozled by all of this. But more on that later, because now, poor Pug has to go undercover with the dweebs, and honestly many of these comments, they're like their own mini prophecies of the things that people have literally said. She-Hulk? What about He-Hulk? Look, I'm not saying Lady Thor sucks because she's a woman, it's just, she sucks. I'd say the same if there was a man Thor. And then in the least surprising twist of all time, it turns out Todd runs Intelligentsia and is Hulk King. And also, is this an Alexis Ohanian call-out? Or maybe the 4chan guy? Who knows? Anyway, there's then more predictive Twitter comments turned into dialogue, as Todd rants about how She-Hulk's just a lame Hulk ripoff, and that superpowers should only go to those best suited. So it's one of those phrases that people who hate everybody who's not a white dude love to throw around. Why should we have diversity in the workplace when the best people for the job are all white men who benefit off centuries of social, political, and economic dominance in Western countries? And honestly, it makes me feel so bad for these writers, because they had to go on some really big social media deep dives. Because all of this shit feels very accurate. Anyway, Todd then gives a cringy speech about how they're going to rise up, and then introduces Abomination to the stage, who, judging by what he's saying and how he acts, doesn't actually know what this whole meeting's about and just wants to give his motivational speeches. Anyway, this is where the aforementioned off-the-railness starts to kick in. Jen bursts in and is mad at Emil, who gives a sort of apology, but not really. Todd then reveals he hired Josh and that he stole her blood, which he then uses to give himself Hulk powers, to Jen's disdain as she thinks that this is a very contrived plot point. And then Titania, of all people, bursts in, and Todd tries to attack Jen, who's saved by Abomination, and then Hulk bursts in and starts attacking Abomination. And then Jen pauses everything and asks the audience whether this storyline is even good. And so, we head back to the Disney Plus home screen, because yeah, the ending is a mess. So let's get weird and have Jen climb into another Marvel show, a behind the scenes, to go and complain to the writers. And was she just wearing her costume under her clothes the entire time? But anyway, she climbs into Marvel Assembled and lands in the real world. And I cannot believe that our first look of She-Hulk from the trailer was part of this story thread. That's wild. Also, considering how different this show's turned out from its trailer, was that trailer seriously just bait? That's actually pretty funny. These guys are such trolls. Anyway, the gist of this is that the whole sequence is long and weird, but fun. She tells the writers that their ending's bad and that they should feel bad, and then she demands an audience with Kevin Feige. And so, after signing an NDA, because everybody has to sign the NDA, she busts into Kevin's office after beating the shit out of the security guards in a scene that felt like when Black Widow runs the gauntlet against the terrorists in Iron Man 2. She meets Kevin, who's not a man, but basically just the robot from WALL-E, but with a built-in baseball cap. Nice. And yeah, this whole scene, it's a goddamn fever dream, I tells ya. Just pure, unrefined, fourth wall destruction. Talking about how she needs to transform into human gen off screen because she's too expensive and the CGI department are working on Black Panther 2. Talking about how Marvel's gotten stale with the way it tells its stories and how his ending's bad and he should feel bad. And so, this slander convinces him to change her story as long as she leaves him alone and never comes back. Also, X-Men tease, hey! And so, she asks that her ending suit her show. Get rid of the blood plot. Todd is the only villain you need. The incels are the enemy. There's no need for those Hulk powers, and also delete Hulk from the ending. They don't need him. Even though Kevin wants him to return to explain what's going on, in space and why he left. But nope, save that for the movie. Hulk movie though, I'm down for that. Also, apparently Emil needs to be held accountable, and also they want to make it during the day, because night is too angsty and too cliche. And yeah, I get it. Most of the finales are at night. Oh, and bring back some Daredevil for Jen. And so anyway, she gets booted back into her universe and confronts Todd, who's already been defeated and arrested, because, he has no powers now, and so she's going to have to sue him instead. And then Daredevil drops in from out of nowhere, and they flirt, even though he missed the whole thing. And then Blonsky gets locked up for another decade, which is a major bummer. And yeah, even Bruce comes back just in time for the family barbecue, with his son with him. So I guess we really are going to get that Hulk movie that's been rumoured for the last, billion years. And then we finish off with She-Hulk cleared and telling the world she's going to be a superhero and a lawyer. And then getting called the difficult diva of law. Jesus Christ. Oh, and then Blonsky decides that a decade in prison sounds shit, so Wong busts him out and gives him asylum. Sucked in, government. And so yeah, that's where it ends. And honestly, this episode was great. Very fun and strange and out there. I liked that. And I think it really wraps up the series as a whole quite nicely. But at the same time, I can't help but wish the whole series was like this. Not just the last few episodes. So whilst I'm eager to see more of this kind of thing, I can't help but think that they could have made this even more batshit insane. But of course, those are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the show and the finale? You like him, hate him? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.